The Greyhound bus hissed as it pulled away from the curb, leaving Rebecca standing alone in a cloud of exhaust. She tightened her grip on the handle of her worn suitcase, her knuckles turning white. She was wearing English clothes, faded jeans, and a denim jacket that felt suddenly foreign and heavy on her skin in the quiet air of Lancaster County. 3 years. It had been 3 years since she climbed out of her bedroom window and ran toward the highway, chasing a freedom that turned out to be hollow. She had promised herself she would never look back. But now, with a heart full of regrets and pockets full of nothing, she was walking the 3 miles of gravel road back to the farmhouse door she had sworn never to open again. She just hoped it wasn't locked. The gravel crunched beneath Rebecca's boots, a harsh, rhythmic sound that seemed to echo the pounding of her own heart. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It was a sound she hadn't heard in over 1,000 days. In the city, the ground didn't crunch, it hummed. It hummed with traffic, with voices, with the constant electric buzz of a world that never slept. It was late afternoon in October. The sun, a heavy orb of burnt orange, was beginning its slow descent behind the silos of the neighboring farms. The golden light washed over the fields of tobacco and corn, turning the drying stalks into statues of amber. To a tourist, it was a postcard. To Rebecca, it was a memory that hurt to look at. She walked slowly, dragging the suitcase that contained everything she owned in the world. 3 changes of clothes, a Bible she hadn't opened in months, and $17. She was 21 years old, but she felt ancient. Her hair, once kept neatly under a prayer covering, now hung loose around her shoulders, wind-blown and tangled. Every step toward the white farmhouse on the hill felt heavier than the last. She passed the Miller farm and saw the cows lining up for the evening milking. She smelled the silage, that pungent, earthy scent of fermented corn that used to make her wrinkle her nose as a child. Now, strangely, it smelled like safety. She began to rehearse the words she would say to her dead father and mother. "I was wrong. I am sorry. Can I come home?" The words tasted like ash in her mouth. In the story of the prodigal son, the father runs to meet the child. But Rebecca wasn't sure if Samuel Yoder was the running kind. He was a man of the ordnung, strict and unyielding as the iron rims of a buggy wheel. He was a man who believed that a promise broken was a fence post. Rotted it weakened the whole structure. She crested the final hill. The house came into view. It was pristine. A white clapboard shone in the twilight. The green roller shades were pulled halfway down in the windows, exactly even as the rules dictated. Laundry snapped on the lined black broadfall trousers, purple shirts, emerald dresses dancing in the breeze like ghosts of the life she had abandoned. She stopped at the end of the driveway, her courage faltering. A black buggy was parked near the barn, the horse unhitched. There was movement on the porch. Her mother, Martha, was sweeping the steps. Rebecca's breath hitched. Martha looked older. Her shoulders were more stooped, her movements a little slower than Rebecca remembered. Rebecca took a step forward, her boot scuffing a large stone. The sound carried in the stillness like a gunshot. Martha froze. She looked up, shielding her eyes from the sun with a hand. She stared at the figure at the end of the lane. For a long, agonizing moment, neither of them moved. The wind whistled through the corn stalks. Then the broom clattered to the wooden porch floor. Rebecca? The name was carried on the wind, fragile and disbelieving. Rebecca dropped her suitcase. She tried to speak, but her throat closed up. She just nodded, tears instantly blurring her vision, hot and stinging. Martha didn't run. She walked, her steps careful, down the porch stairs and onto the gravel. She stopped 3 feet from her daughter. She looked at the jeans, the denim jacket, the loose, uncovered hair. A shadow of pain crossed her face, the pain of seeing her child look like a stranger. But then she looked into Rebecca's eyes, and the mother in her overtook the Amish woman in her. "You are thin," Martha whispered, her voice trembling. "Your face, it is pale. Have you eaten?" That simple question, practical, motherly, ignoring the 3 years of silence and focusing on the immediate need, broke the dam inside Rebecca. She sobbed, a harsh, guttural sound, and collapsed forward. Martha caught her. She held her tight, smelling of lye soap, dried lavender and yeast, the scent of home. "Come inside," Martha said softly, stroking Rebecca's tangled hair as if she were a child again. "We will find you a dress. We will wash the world off you." Entering the kitchen was like stepping back in time. The hiss of the gas lamp hanging from the ceiling was the same. The linoleum floor was polished to a shine that reflected the table legs. The heavy oak table was set for supper. Rebecca froze. There were 4 plates, one for Dad at the head, one for Mom, one for her brother Daniel, and one empty spot. "We never stopped setting it," Martha said quietly, noticing Rebecca's stare. "Every night, Daniel said it was a waste of a clean plate. Your father said it was an act of faith." Rebecca felt a fresh wave of shame. While she was in the city, ignoring their letters, trying to pretend she had no past, they were setting a plate for her every single night. Martha led her upstairs to her old room. It was untouched. The quilt she had stitched when she was 16 was still on the bed. Martha opened the cedar chest and pulled out a simple green dress and a black apron. "Burn the English clothes," Martha said, her voice gentle but firm. "Put them in the stove. You cannot wear 2 worlds at once." Rebecca changed. The dress was tight across the shoulders, and the fabric felt rough compared to the cotton blends she had worn in the city. But as she pinned the white cap over her hair, pulling the strands back tight, she felt a strange sense of relief. The mask was gone. Then the back door slammed downstairs. Heavy boots stomped on the mudroom floor. "Mom, is supper ready?" It was Daniel. Her younger brother, though he wasn't so young anymore. In a moment, "Daniel," Martha called out, her voice nervous. We have a guest." Rebecca walked down the stairs, her hand trembling on the banister. She stepped into the kitchen. Daniel was washing his hands at the sink. He turned around. He was taller, broader, with the beginnings of a beard that marked him as a baptized member of the church. He stared at Rebecca, the towel freezing in his hands. His expression didn't soften like their mother's. It hardened. "So," Daniel said, his voice cold, "the tourist returns." "Daniel," Martha warned. "No, Mom," Daniel snapped. "She leaves us for 3 years. I have to do her chores and mine. I have to watch you cry at night. And now she just walks back in because she ran out of money?" I didn't run out of money," Rebecca lied weakly. "I just... ... You just what?" Daniel challenged. Before she could answer, the door opened again. A shadow filled the frame. Samuel Yoder walked in. He was a giant of a man, his presence filling the room. He took off his straw hat and hung it on the peg. He looked at Martha, sensing the tension.
"Ow."
Then he turned and saw Rebecca. The room went deathly silent. The clock on the wall ticked. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Samuel's face was unreadable. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her, searching for the defiance that had been there 3 years ago. Saw only exhaustion and fear. He didn't hug her. He didn't smile. He walked to the sink, washed his hands beside Daniel, and dried them. "Supper is ready," Samuel said, his voice gruff. He walked to the table and pulled out his chair. He looked at Rebecca, who was still standing by the stairs, terrified. "Sit." She sat in her old spot. Samuel bowed his head. "Let us pray." They prayed in silence, a long, heavy silence that stretched for minutes. When Samuel finally said amen, he picked up the bread basket. He cut a slice of homemade sourdough, passed the basket to Martha, then to Daniel. Then he took the heel of the bread, the crusty end piece that Rebecca had always loved best as a child, and placed it on her plate. It was a peace offering made of flour and water. He didn't say he forgave her, but he fed her. The first week was a blur of physical pain. Rebecca's body, soft from city living, rebelled against the farm work. Her hands blistered from the hoe handle. Her back screamed from bending over the rows of tobacco, but she didn't complain. She worked from dawn until dusk, trying to earn her keep, trying to prove she wasn't a tourist. But the farm was a sanctuary compared to the town. On Tuesday, Martha sent Rebecca to the dry goods store in the village to buy sugar and canning jars. Rebecca hitched the horse to the market wagon, her hand shaking slightly as she took the reins. As she drove into town, she felt the eyes. Tourists pointed cameras at her, smiling and waving, thinking she was just a quaint local. They didn't know she was a scandal. Inside the store, she saw Mary Lapp. Mary had been her best friend in school. They had shared secrets, sewn quilts together, dreamed about their weddings. "Mary?" Rebecca said, a smile breaking across her face. She stepped forward in the aisle. Mary looked up from the bolt of fabric she was measuring. Her eyes went wide. Then her face closed like a shutter. She turned her back on Rebecca and began speaking rapidly in Pennsylvania Dutch to the shopkeeper, completely ignoring her presence. Rebecca stood there, her hand frozen mid-wave. The sting of rejection was sharper than any physical blow. She realized then that coming home wasn't just about walking through the door. It was about earning the right to stay. She hurriedly bought her sugar and left, her cheeks burning. As she loaded the wagon, she saw a buggy passing by. The driver was a young man with broad shoulders and a serious face. Jonas Byler. He had been her intended. They hadn't been officially betrothed, but everyone knew. He had courted her for a year. She left. She hadn't even said goodbye to him face to face. She was too cowardly. She had left a note tucked under the seat of his buggy. Jonas slowed his horse as he passed the store. He looked at Rebecca. His gaze wasn't angry, but it was incredibly sad. It was the look of a man who had mourned someone who wasn't dead. He tipped his hat, a polite, distant gesture given to strangers, and snapped the reins, moving on. Rebecca watched him go, feeling a crack in her heart that she knew she deserved. November brought the gray skies and the biting wind. The harvest was late this year due to a wet spring, and the pressure was on to get the corn in before the snows came. The Yoder farm was behind schedule. The tension in the house was high. Daniel was still barely speaking to Rebecca. He would leave the room when she entered. He treated her like a hired hand he didn't trust. "Dad needs help in the hayloft," Daniel muttered one afternoon. "I have to fix the fence in the lower pasture. Can you handle the bales, or is that too heavy for you?" "I can handle it," Rebecca said quietly. She climbed the ladder into the dusty, golden light of the loft. Samuel was there, using a pitchfork to move the heavy square bales. He looked tired. His breathing was heavy. "I will take the high stack, Dad," Rebecca said. "You take the chute." Samuel nodded, grateful for the help, though he wouldn't say it. They worked in rhythm for an hour, the only sound the grunt of effort and the thump of bales hitting the floor below. Then it happened. Samuel stepped back to gain leverage on a particularly heavy bale. He didn't see the weak spot in the floorboards, a patch of wood that had rotted from a roof leak the previous winter. There was a sickening crack. "Dead," Rebecca screamed. The floor gave way. Samuel fell through the hole, crashing onto the concrete floor of the milking parlor 12 feet below. The silence that followed was terrified. Rebecca scrambled down the ladder so fast she nearly fell herself. She found her father lying in a heap of straw and dust. His leg was twisted at a horrific, unnatural angle. His face was gray, beads of sweat already forming on his forehead. He was making a low, guttural sound of pain. "Daniel!" Rebecca screamed, her voice tearing through the barn. "Daniel!" She knelt beside her father. "Dead, don't move. Do not move." Daniel came running in, breathless. When he saw his father, his face went white. Panic seized him. I will get the buggy. We have to get him to the doctor." "No, the hospital." "I will run to the English neighbors and use the phone for an ambulance." "No." Rebecca's voice cracked like a whip. It was sharp, authoritative, a tone she had learned in the city, working in a medical clinic. Daniel stopped, stunned. "An ambulance will take 20 minutes, Rebecca said, her mind racing. "And the movement will shatter his hip if it isn't stabilized. Look at the angle, Daniel. The bone is pressing on the artery. If we move him wrong, he loses the leg." "What do we do?" Daniel asked, his voice shaking. He was a farmer, not a medic. He looked at his sister, helpless. "Get me 2 flat boards from the workshop. Now. And the horse bandages. And the scissors." Rebecca ripped the hem of her apron. She knelt in the dirt. "Dad, listen to me. I have to pull the leg straight to splint it. It is going to hurt more than anything you have ever felt. But I have to do it." Samuel looked up at her. Through the haze of agony, he saw something new in his daughter's eyes. Strength. "Do it, God. Help me," Samuel whispered. Rebecca worked with efficient, steady hands. She set the traction, ignored his scream of pain, and bound the leg tight to the boards. She checked the pulse in his foot. It was strong. When the English doctor finally arrived an hour later, called by a neighbor, he inspected Rebecca's work. "Who did the splint?" the doctor asked, looking at Samuel. "My daughter," Samuel grunted. "She saved your leg, Sam," the doctor said. "If he had been jostled in a buggy like that, the bone would have severed the femoral artery. You would have bled out before you hit the main road." Samuel looked at Rebecca. She was standing in the corner, covered in dust and straw, her hands trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. For the first time in 3 years, the look in his eyes wasn't disappointment. It was respect. Recovery was slow. Samuel was confined to the recliner in the living room for 6 weeks. This meant he couldn't oversee the farm's business, couldn't go to the feed mill, he couldn't negotiate the milk prices. Usually this would fall to Daniel. But Daniel was overwhelmed with the physical labor of 2 men. Rebecca, Samuel said one evening, pointing to the heavy leather ledger on the desk, "Bring me the book, the bills." For the next week, Rebecca sat by the kerosene lamp, going over the farm's finances, and she found a problem. She noticed that the grain supplier, a man from the next county, had been slowly raising the prices on the special mix feed he sold to the Amish farmers. He was adding hidden delivery surcharges and processing fees that weren't in the contract. He counted on the Amish not to argue, not to sue, and not to be good at checking the fine print of English contracts. "Dead," Rebecca said. "Mr. Harrison is cheating us. Look here, and here." Samuel squinted at the paper. "We have used Harrison for 20 years. He is a friend." "He is not a friend," Rebecca said firmly. "He is stealing $500 a month." The next day, when Harrison's truck pulled up, Rebecca walked out to meet him. She held the ledger in her hand. Harrison, a burly man with a cigar, laughed when he saw her. "Where's your dad, little lady? I need a check." "My father's indisposed," Rebecca said. Her voice cool and crisped her city voice. "And there will be no check today, Mr. Harrison. Not until you explain these surcharges." Harrison scowled. "Now listen here. I don't discuss business with women, especially not ... double quotes. Especially not one who can read a contract," Rebecca interrupted. She locked eyes with him. "I lived in the city, Mr. Harrison. I know what a surcharge is. You are overcharging us by 15%. You will credit our account for the last 6 months, or we will take our business to the co-op in Lancaster. And I will tell every bishop in the district exactly how you treat your friends." Harrison stared at her. He saw she wasn't bluffing, grumbled, spat on the ground, and pulled out his invoice pad to write a credit. Daniel had been watching from the barn door. When the truck drove away, he walked up to Rebecca. "You got him to credit the account?" Daniel asked, amazed. "Ned has been trying to get him to lower prices for years." "I just spoke his language," Rebecca said, shrugging, looked at his boots, then at her. I am glad you are back, Beck." It was the first time he had used her nickname. Rebecca smiled, tears pricking her eyes. "I'm glad to be back, Danny." Winter came deep and white. The snow drifted against the fences. The farm was quiet, but safe. The finances were stable. Samuel was walking with a cane, and the family was whole. But there was still one piece missing. On a Sunday in December, after the church service held in the Yoder barn, Rebecca was washing dishes in the kitchen. The house was full of people. She felt a presence behind her. She turned. It was Jonas. He was holding his hat in his hands, turning the brim nervously. "Rebecca," he said. "Jonas," she replied, wiping her soapy hands on her apron. "I heard about what you did," he said. "With your father's leg and with the grain merchant, people are talking." "Let them talk," Rebecca said, looking down. "They usually do." "No," Jonas said, taking a step closer. They're saying that perhaps you didn't leave just to run away. Perhaps you left to learn things that we needed you to know. Like Joseph in Egypt." Rebecca looked up, stunned by the comparison. "I just wanted to see the world, Jonas, and I found out it wasn't for me." "And I," Jonas said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "found out that this world is very quiet without you." The air between them crackled. "The singing is tonight at the Stoltzfus farm," Jonas said. "I have space in my buggy, if you would like a ride." It was the Amish equivalent of a marriage proposal, or at least the start of one. It was a public declaration that he was taking her back. "I would like that very much," Rebecca whispered. The story ends on Thanksgiving Day. The long wooden table is extended to its full length. The house is warm, smelling of roast turkey, sage stuffing, and pumpkin pie. Samuel sits at the head of the table. His crutches are leaning against the wall. He doesn't need them as much anymore. Martha is smiling, her face years younger. Daniel is laughing at a joke. And next to Rebecca sits Jonas, his hand resting near hers on the tablecloth. Samuel clears his throat. The room goes quiet. He looks around the table. "We've had a hard year," Samuel begins. "A broken leg, a hard harvest. But we have much to be thankful for." He looks at the food, then he looks directly at Rebecca. His eyes are wet. "The good book says that there is a time for everything," Samuel says softly. "A time to scatter stones, and a time to gather them. A time to weep, and a time to laugh." He pauses, "and a time to return. We are thankful, that the circle is unbroken." He reaches out his hand. Rebecca takes it. Her hand is rough now, calloused from the work, scarred from the farm. It is a worker's hand, an Amish hand. Martha takes her other hand. Daniel takes Martha's. Jonas takes Rebecca's. As they bow their heads to pray, Rebecca closes her eyes. She realizes she isn't just back in Lancaster County. She is home. The bright lights of the city are a distant memory, outshined completely by the warm golden glow of the kerosene lamp in the center of the table, and the love in the faces around her. She had traveled the world to find herself, only to realize she had been exactly where she belonged all along.